Unmute yourself.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, thank you, Caesar. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're staying safe and healthy. And welcome to this commercial real estate meeting. And as you know, this is a regular meeting every third Wednesday of the month at 11 o'clock. Okay, the purpose of this meeting is to encourage the agents to get into commercial real estate. Now, we do have a very good commercial real estate department in Coldwell Banker George Realty. Okay, and also we have a good support from the Coldwell Banker Commercial, which is the national and the global commercial real estate outfit. And so we have a lot of support, we have a lot of resources, and you know, really, if you haven't gotten into the commercial real estate yet, think about it. And you know, maybe it's kind of intimidating in the beginning to get into the commercial real estate, but it actually is not that bad, you know, and actually sometimes it's easier than the residential counterpart because you don't have to have a lot of emotional factors that you have to consider. For example, you know, the school district or the appeal of the building or even feng shui, right? I mean, you know, sometimes you get so bogged up in the feng shui and then and with the residential properties, you know, you're not doing it of any merit of the property itself. And so, you know, in commercial real estate, if the financial data makes sense, you know, the number makes sense, then it's going to sell. Very simple, right? So and we do have a lot of experienced commercial real estate agent in our company. You know, a lot of them, for example, Hayashi, Nick, and David, and to just name a few. So you can rub shoulder with them, work with them, and learn from them, and you know, and get into the commercial real estate pretty easily. So I would really encourage to get into it. You will never regret. Now, every month I look forward to this meeting because I learn a lot from it. From the last three meetings that we have very good speakers, and this time is no exception. Today we are so honored to have our boss and the most renowned developer in the area, James Chow, to talk to us. And James Chow and his deputy Ken Lee is going to talk to us about the land development. And James Chow right now currently has over 10 projects in the area. And after it's built, we can sell it for him, right? And so there's a good synergy between James Chow's project and Coldwell Banker George Realty. And so I would like to have all the agents take advantage of it. Okay, so I will take a little bit of introduction for James Chow and Ken. And for James Chow, everybody knows James Chow. Now he's the owner and the chairman of Coldwell Banker George Realty. He's the president of the Pacific Plaza Premier and owner of Concord Property Management. So he's really the three-in-one real estate mogul. He has over 40 years of experience in real estate sales and development, both in commercial and industrial sectors. He also is the major shareholder of the Green Tree Inn, which owns and operates 2,000 hotels in China and the US. So with his experience, he's going to bring a lot of insight into the commercial real estate development. Now, as for Ken, Ken Lee is the vice president of development for Pacific Plaza Premier. Ken Lee has over 20 years of experience in public and private sector and expertise in real estate community development, economic and market analysis, and civic engagement. And he's also an expert in strategic planning and organization development with technical skills in real estate development, asset management, community development, municipal finance, and land economics. Before he came to Pacific Plaza Premier, he served as the contract, community, and economic development director for the city of Irvindale. So with this vast experience here, he's undoubtedly the most qualified speaker on the real estate development. So without further ado, let's welcome James Chow and Ken Lee. Give them a hand. James, again, you're on. You can unmute yourself.
James is muted, but he's gonna go ahead and kick us
James,
off.
unmute yourself, please. You have to unmute yourself, James.
Still muted.
Caesar, can you unmute for him, please?
I cannot. He had to do it himself.
Oh.
On the bottom, the little microphone.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, now you go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is my first time the show on the TV. So today we have two people, Kenny and me, to talk about the development. I will introduce myself. Okay, give you some background from the how can evolve to the development. I started the join to the George Realty, not Coal Banker, George Realty in the 1985. Until today, almost 6 years. Just one company who I get a license. And before I'm involved to the real estate, I'm an export-import business in the downtown Los Angeles. So I import the toy and the sunglasses for the almost 10 years. After I sold my export-import business, then I get my license. I joined to the George Realty. From George Realty, I don't know nothing for the real estate. So I think I can, get some business. How can I get the business? First of all, I pick up just one city, small city, Temple City. I started sell the house. In that time, the house is very cheap. About 1,500 to the 2,000 square foot is only $100,000 to $150,000. For first year, only 6 months, I sold almost 20 single house in the Temple City. In the 1986, I started to sell the warehouse because I have the experience for export-import business. So I know a lot of small business owner in the downtown Los Angeles. So I know the warehouse. So I can start the warehouse because I see a lot of small business owner pay the rent for the warehouse. I tell the small business owner, say, hey, if you just pay the rent to the owner, why you don't purchase the warehouse and pay the rent to the bank? You can get loan after 20 years. You pay off. You own the real estate. So in that time, we have the small business loan. So all the owner pay only 5% to 10% the down payment, and get the guarantee from the government, and own the building, and pay the interest to the bank. Today, after he have 30 years business, he want to retire, and he own the building and free and clear. And today rented the space. For example, he have the 40,000 square foot building, rent about 30,000 to 40,000 income every month. So everybody very happy, very enjoy. Then from the 1988 to the 2000, 20,000. Okay, I sold almost 200 warehouse and built about 88, the brand new built through the warehouse. Okay, since that time, a lot of people move into the Los Angeles, so everybody moved to to very far away the city. Like before, if I work in the downtown, I live in the Roland Heights, and people say, where's Roland Heights? It's so far away. Okay, but today it's very close. A lot of people spend a lot of time and the time and the energy on the freeway. So starts the 2000, I think that the government changed some regulation. Okay, start from downtown Los Angeles. Before it's only can build your two-story or three-story house or apartment. open can build a 6th floor or 7th floor for the mixed use. And the mixed use starts from downtown then to the Pasadena. In that time, I think this is a good opportunity for the young people or the middle-aged people, live in the close to downtown. It's not far away, okay? So I purchased the one land in the 300 West Main Street before it's a supermarket, the AAA supermarket. We purchased land. We started, apply to the mixed use. And the 2013, we started a construction for the, mixed use. First building is 120 units condo and the 20,000 square for the commercial. 2 years later, we finished the building. Within the 1 month, we sold everything. Okay, this is good, the idea for us. So that's when we started, invite Kenny to my vice president, and we start do the more, the mixed use. Right, until today, we have about, we pick up the place is only the San Gabriel Valley. I don't want to drive too far away. I think only the 30 minutes driveway. This city, we can find some, the land and do the, mixed use. So, but when we purchase land, we need to be very careful. Is on the real estate, we have 3 very important target: location, location, location. Okay, so within this 10, the location, I think is you can see later, the Candy will induce all the project. You can see all the projects very good location. So all the development, the procedure and the function and the benefit, and the Candy will to induce for everybody, because the Peter only giving 5 minutes. So the basically the minute I give to Kenny, and Kenny will tell all the story. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, James. Very good.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Lee. I'm Vice President of Development for Pacific Plaza Premier Development Group. It's been I know several of you that are on this Zoom, and it's been an honor for me to, over time, work closer with both Peter and Shumei and James, as well as Caesar and the rest of the team. We absolutely enjoy sharing a building with you guys as well, and appreciate also that several of you have even come out to speak in support for some of our projects as well. I'm going to do a PowerPoint. One thing that happens when I run a PowerPoint, though, just FYI, is I can't see you, I can't see the Zoom, I can't see the chat. So I do want this to be interactive versus me just talking for 20+ minutes. So feel free to interrupt me. Just say, Ken, I have a question, and I'll go ahead and stop. But I do want to go ahead and share my screen, which I think, Caesar, I have the ability, right?
Correct.
Okay. Let me go ahead and do that. All right. So the presentation, that I want to be able to walk through with you all is explaining a little bit about our company, how we're structured, our philosophy in terms of our approach for development. But more so, I want to spend time talking about the development process. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the key steps, and James is going to jump in at any point as well. So let me just start off by explaining a little bit more about the company. So the company itself is really still, in our minds, a startup. We're a boutique development firm. We have a small team, but we're very strategic and agile. But with the combined experience of James, myself, and others, we're able to accomplish quite a bit, even with a small but mighty team. From an executive leadership standpoint, obviously, James, and there's myself, but we also work closely with Casper. Some of you know him, James's son, who has access to unique capital sources, as well as development opportunities and acquisition opportunities But also we have a property management arm, as Peter mentioned, Concord Property Management, which Sophia Chow is our senior manager. A little bit more about myself. I spent the first half of my career in the public sector. So I was doing a lot of work for community development departments for various cities. I worked in county government. I also worked in economic development, redevelopment before it was dissolved by Governor Jerry Brown, as well as housing as well, including affordable housing. And then I transitioned into private consulting and ultimately started my own consulting firm, which is when I met James. So I actually met James in Irwindale when I was serving as a community development director there. And James and a group of other investors came in and said, we're going to buy the Irwindale Speedway. And I thought in my head, yeah, right, I'll believe it when I see it. But lo and behold, the very next week, they closed escrow on the property. So, you know, since then, I've actually been working with James also on that project as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But, you know, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is making sure that we assemble the best team possible for our projects. And this is really critical because there's so many risk points in the development process. And if you don't have a solid team who knows what they're doing, you will suffer and struggle along the way. So these are some of the regular folks that we work with from an architecture and design perspective. We work closely with Media Portfolio, that's Rick Abe, who also happens to be the city architect for several cities, including the city of Alhambra. Simon Lee and Associates, who's well known throughout the San Gabriel Valley, does many projects from an infill mixed use standpoint. Community engagement, which I'll talk about more later, is extremely important as part of our development process because it sometimes will make or break a project, which has occurred for us in the past as well. So John Boeri, who's the CEO of Stratoscope, we work closely with in terms of strategizing on our community outreach efforts. So engineering design, you know, these are fairly large firms like Fusco Engineering, who does our civil engineering. And then importantly, for this group especially, leasing and sales is very important. We work closely with Newmark Knight Frank in terms of more advisory from a strategic perspective on some of our larger retail assets. But obviously with James and with Peter and Shumei and the rest of you, we have a very close relationship with Coldwell Banker, George Realty, and we hope to continue to expand that as well. On the legal side, that's also very important because there's a lot of legal nooks and crannies and landmines as well during the process. We work closely with Bill Pham from Pham Law Group on subdivision, as well as Best Bets and Krieger in terms of land use law as well. Our overall philosophy and approach, just as I was saying, is really focused on surrounding ourselves with experts, but also how we professionally approach cities in terms of proposing projects and working with the community. But ultimately, and I'll explain this more later also, it's about performance. There's many developers out there who can buy land, who can get them approved, but can they actually perform on them? Can they actually get them built? And that really becomes the big question. I know that James, you wanted to go ahead and touch a little bit on this before I go further. So James, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, for the development function and the procedure, okay. Number one, when we need to find the land, first of all, we need a choice for the location. I talked before, it's a location. When I find a good location, and then we can purchase. If we get a deal, then we can start to do the due diligence. What kind of zoning for this location? Can we build a mixed use? Because all zoning is different. Okay, some land can build an apartment house, or but we only need can build the multifamily or the mixed use. So then if we have closed a deal, we can hire the architecture and the engineer, start to do the drawing, working drawing, and apply to the entitlement. Okay, in the entitlement, there's a very important is can we make money? Okay, you need a very careful the cost breakdown. So in the kind of for example, okay, why we chose the the San Gabriel Valley? Like we choice for the Pasadena, Arcadia, Alhambra, San Gabriel, Monte Park, this area. Because, when you want to build a building, if you want to make money, the cost right now is very high. If you want to get a profit, that means your sale price deduct your cost. If sales price less the cost, then you cannot do it. You need at least 20 to 50% profit, then you can do it. So after then we can get all the cost breakdown and all the permit, everything. We can talk with the bank. The bank will give you the construction loan. But for the purchase, you need to prepare two things. Number one is land. Land you need to free and clear. You need to pay cash. You cannot get any land loan from the bank. Okay, so you need to pay cash. And the number two, you need to prepare the soft cost. So a lot of people don't know why development has the soft cost. For example, if you want to get a loan, you need to pay interest, right? If you want to get a permit, you need to get all the fee from the city, and the mixed use you need to get a web bus insurance. It's always very expensive, and you need to get the utility like electricity, gas, and water, and the sewer system. Okay, a lot of things, property tax. This is called the soft cost. Soft cost almost construction the cost 40%. So a lot of people don't know. Especially in this time, the mixed use is just started 10 years ago. Not too much the mixed use building in the San Gabriel Valley. So people get the land, he don't know how can develop. And mixed use is different field from the apartment or house. Totally different. Okay, so need to be very careful. Otherwise, if you have one building stock, this involved big money. You get the developer have a lot of headache. Okay, and construction, because before the construction build only the 2-story or 3-story apartment. Mixed use is always involved to the basement parking. This one is a special the technique for the construction company. So not too much qualified construction can build a mixed use. So choice of construction company is very important. Then after we have the build the building, and we can because of Georgia Realty we have a lot of agent, so we can sell the property easy. So I have the Main Street 300 West Main Street within 1 month sold out, and Arcadia we have the 56 East Duarte First Street and the Duarte. We sell very soon. Like Fabi Chen, he's one of the sales agent for us. Okay. Then after we sell, okay, it's problem for the developer is when you sell, we are the development dealer. We are the dealer. If we have the profit, we need to immediately pay the tax, almost 48% to 50%. So for like first, make sure the 300 West Main Street, we make money. We immediately need to pay 40%. We have no choice. So we have this kind of experience. From the second one, we talk with the CPA and the attorney. So how can I arrange the can deduct the tax? This is very important for your profit, net profit. Then after then we have another company called Concord Management. We managing all the the like HOA, like commercial, managing. So that means we have from the A to Z service for development, the function and the process. Okay. Okay.
Let me just pause. So I mean, the moral of the story there is we have a vertically integrated company. So our company is able to take a project from beginning all the way to end. Are there any questions? I am going to dive into more detail on these steps, but if there's any questions right now, I'm happy to answer any.
Kent, I just wanted to say that I've been typing things that James was saying on the chat. Anybody want to read them? So I was taking some notes. So if you wanted to read them, you can read them. And if you want to put any questions in the chat, I'll read them up to you when you're going through your presentation.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, I'll go ahead and continue then, if that's okay. So let me move a little bit into a discussion.
Hello, this is JD.
Mhm.
I have a couple of questions on the acquisition and due diligence. What would be the minimum site size, minimum dollar size, and what would be the upper limits on the acquisition for the land?
Specifically for our company?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a good question, because before we were probably looking at least an acre and a half in order to do more of a podium style development. Podium just means that you have a parking deck podium and you build wood frame construction above it. But we have started to transition into smaller scale townhome development product types as well. And so I'll share one of our projects, but that site is only half an acre. So we're able to accomplish quite a bit within a small area as well. So on the upper limits though, right now out of our project portfolio and pipeline, the largest site is 6 acres. And I'll explain a little bit more about that when we get into it. We can go a little bit bigger, but once you go a little bit bigger than that, it gets a little bit unwieldy, and I'll explain why as well.
One other question right now. What other, what's the favorite product that you go after? Is it mixed use or townhomes, apartments? What's a industrial?
Those are all good questions. It's a little bit of all of the above. It's really driven by location and the fact that there's so much scarcity of land now in prime markets. And so on the industrial side, we actually do have a couple of industrial projects that are in the works, but industrial land is extremely difficult to find. It's extremely expensive in some of the preferred markets. And so like even Irwindale, right? Even though it seems like there's quite a bit of land, there's not. And so when you talk about what land is trading at, it's a very high dollar amount compared to where it was, let's say 10 years ago. So, but we typically have focused on mixed use, which you'll see in the project portfolio I'm going to share. But moving more into the townhouse style product is preferable right now, just because of construction costs and the difficulty when you have to go subterranean on a project.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Lee, I have a question if you have got another minute.
Yeah.
I just want to understand the time frame that you guys usually look at in terms of from the acquisition and due diligence part before getting to the entitlement, because the entitlement, I understand, takes a while too.
It does, and I'll go through the process and I'll try to explain some of the timeframes, but it certainly depends on the scope of the project.
And does the timeframe affect a lot affect your decision making in terms of like the acquisition and due diligence part, or?
Yes. So it's all about risk assessment, right? When you're in due diligence, and so when you look at a project scope and you know that you're going to run into both political challenges as well as technical challenges on environmental review, and you know it's going to prolong the project, it's a question of appetite of risk and time for the investors as well. So there's a lot of questions related to the capital that goes into the project.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so let me just kind of skip ahead. I mean, this is more about our philosophy in terms of approach. I'll just say that one really critical thing and why James and I work together is because I have a history on the government side. And so what's really important is our relationship with the cities that we work with. And we work very hard to develop good relations, not just with the city staff, because I do have relationships in most of the cities with both city managers, department heads, like their community development directors, but we also work to develop relationships with council members over time as well. That's easier said than done, depending on the council members and how long they've been in these cities as well. I'm not going to spend a heck of a lot of time going over the projects. I'm just going to kind of flip through this portfolio. But as James said, all of our projects are in San Gabriel Valley proper. And so I'm talking about south of 210, west of 605, right around the 10 or north of it, and east of the 710. This is because we know the market. We know what we're dealing with in terms of buyer profile and demographics. But as you can see, there's a heavy concentration of our projects in Alhambra, and there's preferred locations like Arcadia, as well as Monterey Park, where we have a project that's under construction right now. So as James mentioned, this is 300 West Main Street. It was 120 condos over roughly 20,000 square feet of retail. It pre-sold before we completed construction. Let me just kind of focus a little bit more on our current projects. This one was also completed. This is a rendering, but you may be familiar with 56 East Doherty. It's on the corner of southwest corner of Doherty Road and First Street. It used to be an old gym that was there, but this is 37 luxury condos over about 18,000 square feet of retail as well. One of the things that's also important for us is making sure that we transition and hand off the project in a good fashion to the homeowners. And so the one thing that we do within the CCNRs is require that the developer maintains a majority of the seats on the HOA board for a term of 3 years. So I'm actually on this HOA board. I have a meeting right after this at 12 o'clock, which I can be a little bit late to. But I'm about 1.5 years into it. I'm looking forward to getting off that board, quite frankly. Easier said than done. But here's a more recent view of that project in terms of how it looks. So we have a lot of 85C bakeries in many of our projects because of James's close relationship with their owner. This, again, townhouses, this does have a basement level of parking, but you can do a 3-story product type with a garage that's tucked under the first floor, so that you're not increasing your cost by going subterranean into a basement level. But this is currently under construction. We're finishing our last phase in the next couple of months, 79 townhomes. And you can see from these project costs that these are not small projects. And so when we talk about San Gabriel and the fact that it's 6 acres, 243 residential units with 8 live-work units and about 75,000 square feet of retail, we're looking at anywhere between $115, $120 million just in terms of hard construction costs. That doesn't include the soft costs that James mentioned. So when you add land, hard costs, soft costs, and all the other costs that add up, it becomes a very heavy lift. And there's very few developers that can take that type of load. This is in Monterey Park, 136 key hotel over roughly 6,000 square of retail. This is immediately adjacent to Atlantic Times Square, across the street from the new Marriott Courtyard. We have 84 condos that are in the back. This is a phased development. We're about 1.5 years into the construction of it, and we'll be finishing the condos in about a little less than a year now. We're looking at for the condos. So this is our Monterey Bay Square project, 62 condos or apartments, possibly. We have been seeing a very strong rental market. And so rather than the investors taking a big tax hit, as James was mentioning, and it's a lot more incentivized now to hold the property and rent out the residential units. But this will be high-end multifamily units that's over 20,000 square feet of retail. Along the ground floor, there's a 6-tier or 5-tier parking structure because of a lease that we inherited from the city when we bought the property from them, which serves the property across the street, which you're all familiar with, which is the Alhambra Place shopping center where Sprouts, Burlington Coat Factory, and restaurants are. So this is definitely one of our smallest projects, immediately adjacent to that Monterey Bay Square project. And this was just a couple of parcels that were purchased as part of that transaction, and additional property that was acquired to assemble a ½ acre. It's 10 townhomes. One of the units will be affordable to low-income individuals or families. So we're hoping to break ground on this within the next few weeks, actually. And then this is the Speedway in Irwindale, how I met James, 63.5 acres. It was originally entitled actually for International Outlet Center, but the market shifted. So we went back to the drawing board and we submitted an application to entitle the site for a 1.3 million square foot industrial business park. So let me, if there's no questions, let me just kind of start walking through the steps of development. And this is really kind of the meat of the meeting. So I apologize that it took so long to get to this point. But the basics, I mean, this is very similar to what James was explaining, but let me go a little bit more into detail. And so Jerry, you had asked about acquisition. The acquisition process is extremely important. And so when we talk about not just how long does it take to get from due diligence to entitlement, the question also becomes how long is the due diligence period? And so when we are doing our homework on a piece of property, depending on either physical complications with the site, let's say there may be some environmental contamination or there's some other issues, whether the soil is percolating water correctly or not, or more importantly, there's political issues or community opposition to potential projects that we've seen in the past. We're going to ask for a longer due diligence period to the extent that we can. However, I will say that James is very bullish when it comes to acquisition, and we've historically been able to close quickly on sites. Let's say 60-day due diligence with 30-day close, so total 90-day escrow. But that means that within that 60 days, we're doing quite a bit of homework in terms of both financial analysis. When I say residual land value, that just means we run the numbers to see what it's going to cost to build the project, how much money we're going to make. And that tells us what we need to do in terms of land costs when we're acquiring. But this is also the time where James gets very busy and he starts raising capital for the projects. He's got unique access to investors, both overseas and here domestically. But this is about how you bring in limited partners. So we're the general partner in all of these deals because we're the ones taking additional risk as a sponsor and handling all the day-to-day activities. Limited partners just means that they put money in, but they're basically silent partners. So I'll get a little bit more into that timeline piece, but the next step at that point is to get into more detailed design. So during the acquisition timeframe, we'll do a preliminary design. We'll work with our architect. We'll get a conceptual site plan together so that we know what we're dealing with, so that we can actually run numbers based on a proposed development program. But when we get into actual design, this is getting ready for submittal to the city. So we'll work closely with our architect, with our civil engineer, do additional studies. We'll start to run more detailed pro forma analyses. I was going to show you guys a sample of a pro forma. I don't need to show it to you. All I need to tell you is that there's many different worksheets in the workbook, and it's very complicated. And we have a financial analyst in our shop that handles all of that. But most importantly is we don't do this in a vacuum. We go and meet with the city, establish a relationship if we haven't worked with them before, and we'll start to get initial feedback from city staff as far as the architectural design and site plan for the project. The other piece that's extremely critical, as I mentioned before, is community engagement. And as I mentioned, depending on the cities, depending on how active the community groups are, this will make or break a project. We have one project that was on Main Street in Alhambra, which was a by right project. That means that we didn't ask for anything unusual from the city, no variance, no conditional use permit. It was allowed by zoning, and a group of residents came out and scared the planning commission. And we went through 4 hearings, and ultimately they denied the project. We chose not to fight against the city at the time just because of timing. But this community engagement piece is so critical. And so hiring the right consultant to handle that for us, as well as building advocacy and support for projects. And I'll tell you that even out of that experience, we have formed, with the help of other property owners, an Alhambra Main Street Alliance. This isn't supposed to compete with like a chamber, but the whole point is to get property owners and businesses at the table with the city with important policy decisions that's going to affect development for many, many years to come. The land use entitlement piece, this is the big question of how long is it going to take? There's many, many variables to that. The most critical variable is the California Environmental Quality Act. Okay, so some cities, let's say Rosemead, they have the Garvey specific plan. They actually have done a lot of the legwork by establishing all the parameters for how you're going to build a project on any piece of property. And they did a lot of the pre-work for California Environmental Quality Act. What that means is when a developer steps into a city and in that specific plan, a lot of the risk has been addressed for them. So you can move quickly and you can move without fear that there's going to be opposition to the project from the community, as well as other issues that may pop up along the way. But this hearing process is very critical, and why CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, is so important is because of this. It's just, one second. Okay, I'm sorry. My screen froze. Oh, there we go. Okay, can you all still see this?
No, you need to go back and reshare.
Oh, I'm not screen sharing anymore. That's why. Okay. Sorry about that. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna go quick, but not too quick. All right.
There we go.
I don't know why it froze, but so I'm not going to explain this to you guys. Nobody wants me to, but this is the CEQA process. And all I'll say is that when you're going through the project review with the city, and if they say you have to do a full-blown environmental impact report, which is an EIR, which some of you may have heard those 3 letters, those are the 3 letters that you do not want to hear. If you do a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration, you're able to move through this process within 3 to 6 months. If you're doing an EIR, it's 18 to 24 months in some cities. That's an unforeseen delay if you were not expecting that as part of your project. The one project we are doing a full-blown EIR is that San Gabriel nursery project. And so it is an extreme delay, but it's also a very high cost. That EIR costs over $400,000 so far. It's a very expensive endeavor, and it's a very time-consuming endeavor. So Jerry, back to your question of how long does it take? It depends. It's going to depend on many different factors. But if you know you're going to go into an EIR because of the scope of a project, that's going to make you rethink whether you want to proceed with this project and acquire that piece of property. But this whole process can take, typically, if you're not doing EIR, it could take 1 year. It could take 1.5 years, but you have to plan for that. Let's just say we've gone through all our public hearings. So you've gone through planning commission. If you need to go to city council, you go to city council, you go to design review commission or board. There may be some other boards or commissions you have to see along the way. Let's say we get our approvals within 1.5 years, 2 years. Then our team gets back to some very hard and fast work. This can start in advance of the approvals, but you're taking a big risk because it's expensive to prepare these construction plans, construction documents, right? So CDs, which are working drawings, many different names for it, but they're building plans, structural plans, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing plans. There's also civil plans for offsite improvements, as well as James mentioned, wet and dry utilities, water, sewer, electrical, as well as gas. That may seem like an easy thing. That's one of our biggest risk points is dealing with Edison, because we have to work with their team on design and to get their eventual approvals. And it's become difficult in the past. But assuming we get all the permits, then during that time, James is also working quickly on financing. So again, not every developer can get to this point of being able to secure a construction loan. Many developers or investors can buy property, they can entitle it, they can even do their plan check and get their permits, but can they build it? Can they get a loan for anywhere from, let's say, 10 million to 120 million to be able to actually build the project? James has very unique relationships with banks that are in the area, where he was able to secure a $35 million loan for our Monterey Bay Square project in May of last year during the pandemic, when no other banks were giving out loans. So those relationships are make or break. And so, this is also the time we get bids from our general contractors and negotiate. But one other thing that's really important is insurance. We have to make sure that we have appropriate insurance. If it's a for sale condo project, we need wrap-up insurance. What that means is it's complete wrap-up. Like it protects us for a period of 10 years once we're done with construction. That's really important because as many of you know, HOAs tend to sue developers sometime within the 10 years. And that happens almost guaranteed for almost every project. So once we get through inspections, then we get to our certificate of occupancy, and we are along the way, we're not waiting, but we are processing our DRE reports in terms of white report, pink report, et cetera. And we start marketing, going to sales and leasing. We make sure the utilities are all set. But we get our final permit. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You all know the sales and leasing part of this, but we do that in advance. We pre-lease, we pre-sell, whether it's on the retail space or the residential. But we also make sure that we have our property management getting set up. But another important part is that big construction loan that we've taken to build the project. That loan is a short-term loan, and there's takeout financing, which basically converts that loan, pays off a big portion of what's owed, and then converts it into permanent financing as basically an investor or holder of the land. And obviously tenant improvements for retail space is important. And then there's the asset management side where we also will take over and handle the day-to-day operations in terms of tenant relations, rent collection. We'll handle all the maintenance and repairs, vendor management. And this is really asset management at its best. So we also are advisory to our clients and landlords in terms of financial analysis. So, you know, I think you all know return on investment, internal rate of return. I'll just explain that it's basically looking at the trade-off of investing in this project versus any other type of investment. It's a little complicated how that's calculated, but you know, we mostly do cash on cash return calculations. How much money are you putting in? How much money are you getting back? So, you know, the real X factors here is, you know, how much is the cost of the land? Is the project going to quote unquote?
Excuse me, Ken, this is Tony again.
Yeah.
Is there a target IRR that you shoot for, or?
Yeah, I mean, you want to get above 10% if possible. So IRR, though, remember, is a moving target, and it's driven by time. So the longer your project takes, your IRR is dropping. So when you have to all of a sudden do an EIR you weren't expecting to, you may go from a 15% IRR to like an 8%, much to the chagrin of investors, right? But those are the things that you have to be able to anticipate in advance. So,
Okay.
but it varies. It depends on the product type as well. So, here's my meat grinder. So my whole point is this is a very long process. This is not for everyone. James and I have talked about, you know, do we want to keep doing this, right? It's a very, very heavy burden on James's shoulders, especially. He's personally guaranteeing these loans, right? Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, right? It's a lot of loans to carry on your shoulders. It's a lot of stress. And, you know, it is like sometimes being put through a meat grinder when you're dealing with some of these projects and some of the challenges that you face. So it takes an extreme amount of patience. You have to have good communication with your team, with your investors, but you have to understand how to get through all of these different variables. And so, you know, I wanted to spend the rest of the time just, you know, for questions since we only have 5 minutes. But, you know, we do have a team both on the development side as well as the property management side. And as you can see, I'm the vice president on both sides. And so if you need my contact info, I'm happy to have conversations with each of you individually. You guys can come over to our side of the building and just ask for me. Happy to sit down with you, talk about development, talk about real estate. I enjoy it very much. So my door is open to any of you if you want to reach out to me. So questions?
Ken, I have one question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the Monterey Park project will be coming to market soon, maybe at the end of the year. Now, after it's built, how can the Coldwell Banker George Realty's agent collaborate with you in terms of sales and leasings of the project?
Yeah, since James is, yeah, no, that's a good question. You know, I defer to James when it comes to ultimately who we select as our sales and leasing team. And so sometimes that will vary depending on some of the assumptions going into the project, who's invested, who's involved. But James can answer that better than I can.
We have the Pacific Premier. We have the leasing group, the leasing and the sales, the group department. Okay, the Nina in charge, and we have the listing to the core bank Georgia, and all the agents can bring the buyer to purchase. We will share the commission. Okay, we'll pay the commission for both sides.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a quick question. This is Camelia. My question is, why are mixed-use developments so popular now?
It's a good question. It depends on location. So it's primarily going to be location driven because most of the development sites that are starting to become available, particularly in the San Gabriel Valley. So when you have a built out city, built out environment, the real key is, can you not just acquire, but can you assemble multiple lots to be able to create a large enough site for your project? And if so, a lot of the times it's happening along these commercial corridors. And so the cities are the ones that are setting the general plan land use designations and the zoning for these corridors. And they're always pushing for mixed use development because they want the synergy of being able to have a vibrant retail environment with shops and restaurants. But we all know those don't survive if you don't have residents and feet on the street. And so the synergy between the residential and the retail is really symbiotic in many ways, but it also creates a more attractive built environment by having a multi-level mixed use where you have these attractive storefronts, but you also have attractive residential above. And so you're seeing more modern architecture, but you all have seen different variations of mixed use on Old Town Pasadena. But even if you look at Santa Barbara and State Street, there is mixed use along that entire corridor. It's just not at 4-story, 5-story, 6-story like our projects. They're typically at 2 or 3-story because they want to keep the scale down.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Give you one example. Okay. For example, a long time ago, we have the Old Town Pasadena. It's very famous for the purchase and a very good place for the entertainment. And Main Street, Alhambra, is dead street. Okay, before it's no mixed use. Only the 2-story, the retail, nobody walking. Okay, no walking, no traffic. And when the city changed the idea, do the master plan, and build 5 different, the mixed use. So increase a lot of people working and a good, restaurant, good, the store, and the Main Street became the second Old Town Pasadena or maybe Old Town Alhambra. Same way like when we want to build, the mixed use in the Arcadia. Arcadia, the city councilman say the Duarte Street is dead street. How you can save the Duarte Street? We give the suggestion if you can build more mixed use on the Duarte Street will become very good the street. After we have the 56 East Duarte construction done, and the Duarte Street is right now is very, very hot. Okay, so that means why a lot of city want to the build the mixed use, like Rosemy, like Monte, you want the Garfield, a different good street is build more mixed use because increase a lot of traffic and people moving. Then you can grow the business and the city income.
Thank you. So what you're saying is it actually works.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does work. I think when you look at West Main Street in Alhambra, I remember going there when Tony Roma's was there and I was dating my wife and only the Edward Cinema was there. There was nothing else. There was Renaissance Plaza. But when you see what was done on the West Side and bringing density to the area and creating more demand for retail, Sure, it struggled a little bit here and there in terms of vacancies, but for the most part, it has been successful. It's been successful in other areas, not just Pasadena. Everybody looks at Pasadena, but there are other even smaller scale communities that have done such a great job in terms of laying the foundation for mixed use projects to basically bring downtown back, right?
Ken, this is Oscar Castrillon here at the Humber office. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, I ask her.
Sure. My brother has a project right now in Riverside. The city is called Rumbleland. He has a project for 237 homes. And the city just told him that they found shrimps underground. And the thing is, there's a project right next door and they allow them to build. So I was wondering, what can we do? Can we get like a lawyer or actually I would like to come talk to you in person.
No, I'm not in the office right now, but I'd be happy to talk with you and your brother if you'd like. Just reach out to me because, when you talk about some of the complications that you run into, there are ways to address them. Sure, having a lawyer is always important for any project, but the question is strategically, how do you work with the city to collaborate toward, a mutually shared outcome?
Yes, because he's been working on the entitlement, I think about close to 2 years now.
Yeah.
And now they came out with these changes that he has to pay an extra $400,000. And then there's shrimp underground and protected and all kinds of weird stuff. So that's why I would like to talk to you.
Sure. Yeah, I just put my contact info in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me. I'll be in the office tomorrow as well if you want to come over.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I have about probably 3-4 minutes. I let our HOA board know that I'd be a few minutes late. If there are any other questions.
Ken, I'd like to ask you about the factor with the inflation. As you know that we already experienced a lot of inflation and the material costs are really spike up and everything, and the wages of the contractors and everything. So when the more we the time wise, when we have to experience those inflation trend, and how do you compensate for that?
Well, you have to leave some buffer and contingency in your pro forma for increases in costs. It's almost in this environment and market right now, it's almost expected. We're having that conversation right now with one of our contractors, particularly around even just lumber. When you talk about fire treated lumber, which is important for the projects that we're working on, if you look at some of the market data, home building is just going crazy all of a sudden again, but there's not, the supply of lumber has actually decreased. A lot of that may be related to COVID, and there's other restrictions or regulatory restrictions, but naturally you've got, dwindling supply and demand going up, your cost is exponentially increasing. And so how, James's relationship with our contractor is very, very important in terms of being able to negotiate through any potential types of change orders. And so the last thing that you want to do is have a multi-year construction timeframe and you're getting change orders every 6 months from your contractor, right? And so there's a dance in terms of what the increase in cost is due to and whether it was within the control of either the contractor or the developer. But it's a challenge because, you've all seen projects stop mid-construction. There's a reason for that, right? And a lot of times it's because material costs have all of a sudden jumped and they're no longer able to shoulder that burden. And so they ride it out and they wait for construction costs to go back down.
That's right. Even you have a pre-negotiated contract with the general contractor. It doesn't help because the general contractor come back and say, hey, this is unforeseeable event, that all this lumber went up 40%. How am I going to make the ends meet,
So we can say no, but then they can say, oh, we're just going to stop working on your project.
Exactly.
Walk from the job, right? That's the worst case scenario. So
difficult.
It is difficult.
Thank you.
I think I have time for one more question.
I have a question.
Could I say something?
Can I have one question?
this
My
is
name is
Steve.
David Ewan. I'm in the Arcadia office. I want to commend James Chu and Ken Lee for putting together an outstanding PowerPoint presentation to explain the history of your company and your development process and your development team. I think it's just outstanding. I also want to address the question that Camila Vera brought up. Both Steve Hayashi and I have a background having worked in Little Tokyo with redevelopment projects.
Mhm.
And the concept of a mixed-use project, from my perspective, is that the cost of land in a viable market area is so expensive that by having a retail on the ground floor, you're able to bring in economic income that adds to the viability of a mixed-use condominium or apartment project above the retail. And you put the two together, you have a viable project that can have the economic capacity to pay for the land. The land that you guys are paying for and the due diligence is just a horrific burden to the development project. But I just want to commend you for the wonderful development team you put together and giving us commercial brokers and realtors and residential agents the opportunity to try to find buyers or tenants for your project. I strongly recommend that Ken Lee and others on your team have a face-to-face, if that's humanly possible, presentation of your marketing materials, the economic opportunities, and the base rents, the term of the lease, and other tenant improvement incentives that you're going to offer our clients so that we can try to find tenants to move in and quickly occupy your buildings. From a design point of view, I see nothing wrong with your design. You've integrated it into the community. And I just want to say, wow, what a great job you guys are doing.
Thank you,
That's
David.
the end of my presentation.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate that. I know James does too. I've met Steve several times before as well. And no, you're absolutely right. When you look at our San Gabriel project, because of its scale alone, it's a really good example because it depends, right? How much you have bought the land for. James paid top dollar for that 6 acres. And when you talk about that type of initial land cost and hurdle, will that project be economically viable or feasible purely retail alone? No, it will not be. It will be a major loser. The residential is extremely critical to be able to offset and balance out our pro forma. But you're right that there's value on both sides, both the residential and the retail. And that's extremely important. And if you're in a really good retail market area and you're achieving good cap rates, then there's a high value to that retail as well. I do need to run now. I'm 8 minutes late to my HOA board meeting. I'm the secretary of the board, so I do need to run, but I want to thank everyone again. I really appreciate it. I know that this isn't going to be the last time we're meeting and talking. And again, my door is open. If you want to call me, email me, I'm happy to talk with any of the CBGR team. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ken. This is a very enlightening presentation, and I hope that we can have another one on next in the near future. So we'll contact you for further information. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Take care.
James,
Bye-bye.
you have any comments? Other comments? James?
Oh, no, thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Cesar, do you have any comments?
Not at all. I just want to tell the Coldwell Banker George Realty team that we have a great company out there. And if you have land opportunities, if you happen to talk to people, you could always bring that land to James for him to take a good look. And you might be the broker putting that transaction together. James is always looking for land in the San Gabriel Valley. And if there is that opportunity to bring a land to him, something that he will consider, hey, great for Coldwell Banker George Realty. And the same thing, he will let us know when the project is ready to be marketed. Anybody at Coldwell Banker George Realty has a direct access through me to go to James, directly to James, so that way we can propose buyers to once the project is finalized and be brought into market. So thank you to all the commercial agents. Thank you to all the Coldwell Banker George Realty agents for participating and making Coldwell Banker George Realty your company of choice. It's all yours, Peter.
Okay, very good. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you next month, the third Wednesday of the month at 11 o'clock. Okay, remember that. So have a nice day.
See you. Have a
Bye.
nice one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank
Bye.
you, James. Bye-bye.